Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Die Hard MMA podcast. I'm your host, as always, Clint McLean.
What is going on, Die Hards? It's your boy, Clint, coming to you for a special edition of the Die Hard MMA podcast. We're going to do a drive and chat. This is something that I feel like I might be doing a little bit more often if you enjoy it. I spend a whole lot of time in the car driving to and from work and stuff like that, and as always, my brain is on MMA, and there's some topics that I would love to chat about and cover with you guys that I just can't squeeze into the weekly podcast because we already go over an hour long, and I've had some people complain about the length of my podcasts, and I know the main listeners are all diehards, so you're fine with listening to over an hour of MMA breakdowns, analyzing fights and whatnot, but not everybody is. So covering some of these other topics, chatting about fight announcements, stuff like that, I think that's something that I might be able to do in the future like this. So be sure to hit the comment section down below after you take a listen. Let me know how you feel about it. Let me know if you like this, if this is something that you'd like me to do more often. I would love to do this kind of thing. It would allow me to get more content out for you to listen to, and then also kind of get my opinions out there more about some of the stuff that's going on in the MMA world outside of just, you get like 2 lines on Twitter. You only get 20, 40 characters or whatever it is, that it's real hard for me to get what I actually feel about some of these situations out there. So what I want to talk to you about today are Henry Cejudo taking on Jose Aldo, and then we've got Stylebender Israel Adesanya taking on Yoel Romero, and then finally the potential announcement, now this one's not made official, but the rumor of Conor McGregor finally taking on Justin Gaethje. The reason that I picked these 3 fights is, first off, that Conor news is super exciting. The other 2 fights are fantastic, and they actually share some similarities. And I just kind of want to get this out here. I hate the fact that people can get title shots off a loss. Now, this has been a hot topic in the MMA community lately, and I'm very much in the camp of, I don't believe you deserve a title shot coming off of a loss. So Jose Aldo getting the title shot against Henry Cejudo, in my opinion, is damn near criminal. Now, a lot of people feel that Jose Aldo won the fight against Marlon Moraes. I am not in that group. I actually thought that Marlon Moraes did enough to go ahead and win that fight. I think Aldo got the title shot because Dana White was in the group that felt he won the fight. So whatever the case may be, it was a very close fight. It could have gone either way, so no big deal whichever way you feel about it. But we get stuck with the judge's decisions. I mean, that's how MMA has always been. If the judge decides you win or you lose, if there was a bad stoppage or disqualification, we all just have to suck it and we're stuck with it. Now, I'm not saying that that's the way that it should be, but that's the way that it is. And so in this case, Jose Aldo taking a loss should not get a title shot over another contender who hasn't had to deal with that. In my opinion, now I don't want to see Marlon Moraes versus Henry Cejudo 2 necessarily, because we did just see that, but Peter Yan is out there looking phenomenal, and then Aljo is out there who's on a win streak himself as well, and those 2 guys rightfully have claims to that title shot in my opinion. I would rather have seen either one of them get that title shot over Jose Aldo. Kind of bad luck if you feel like Jose Aldo did win the fight against Marlon Moraes, but hey, that's the sport of MMA. Take one more fight, win that fight, and then you get your title shot. That's how it usually tends to work. So in this case, I think a lot of it comes from the fact that Henry Cejudo, wants to fill out his resume. Henry Cejudo is calling for these super fights. He's calling for these big fights, and Aldo is a massive, massive name. He's got a huge fan base. This would be something that would go on his resume after being the GOAT killer from taking out the king, Demetrius Johnson, and then moving up a weight class. And, well, not moving up a weight class, I guess TJ went down to him, but you know what I mean, same thing. TJ comes onto his turf and he freaking wrecks him too, even fully knowing damn well that he was on EPO at the time. Like, he's just going through legends in these lower weight classes and slaughtering them. So Jose Aldo on his record is something that he wants, and I get that. So if you're going to take a dangerous fight, whether it's Peter Yan or Jose Aldo, you might as well take the guy with the name recognition, because it's going to just look that much better for you down the line. Sure, I get that. I totally know where Henry's coming from here, and he's got some pull as the champion to make that happen. Dana White felt like Aldo probably won that fight, so he gets to jump the list because he's a legend. He's winding down, and the UFC is an entertainment corporation at this point. They're giving us fights that the fans want to see. They're putting together fights that, in previous times, like GSP versus Anderson Silva, if those two guys were fighting today, we would see that fight. They have no problem putting together banging fights that make no sense for the fans. So I think that's kind of what this is. Jose Aldo's got such a big fan base when compared to either Aljo or Peter Yan that the UFC sees dollar signs with him getting that title shot, and that's really what's going on here. So it's gonna be a fun fight to watch. I'm very much looking forward to it. You all know that I'm a Henry Cejudo truther, so I am all in on Henry Cejudo on this one. The line is something that I'm not really a huge fan of. He's about a minus 200 favorite right now, and Aldo's freaking big, man. Cejudo coming up from the lower weight class and Aldo coming down from a higher weight class. He looked big in there against Marlon Moraes, and I think Cejudo is going to be at a severe size disadvantage. So I'm really going to have to do my research on this one. I would say I'm preemptively leaning with Cejudo as always, just because he's got such a phenomenal skill set. And even though Aldo didn't look bad against Marlon Moraes, he didn't look great either. And someone like Cejudo will be able to take advantage of the holes that we saw there. I'm not sure he does. Even though he did make the weight class, I didn't actually think he was going to make it down all the way down for the weigh-ins. I thought that he would die on the scales before ever getting there. He somehow managed to make it happen, and I think him being sucked out in that kind of a situation, that's something. Henry's gas tank really is one of his biggest weapons and biggest tools. So anyway, we will break down that fight at a later time. But it really is interesting because I want to see that fight. I love watching Jose Aldo fight. I'm super excited that Henry Cejudo is coming back, so I'm okay with the fight, even though I feel like it was set up in a bad way. The reason it relates to Israel Adesanya versus Yoel Romero is Romero's in the same situation. He's getting a title shot off of a loss. I am a huge fan of Yoel Romero, and in my opinion, he was the uncrowned king because I really believe he beat Robert Whittaker in the rematch. Now, I know he missed weight in that fight, so he would not have been eligible to actually get the belt strapped around his waist, but we knew he was the baddest man in that weight class at that point in time, in my opinion. So him coming off a couple failed attempts at the title, he's over 40 years old, and the difference here is that the fight was set up for Paulo Costa to take on Israel Adesanya. That fight was locked in. It was ready to go. Paulo Costa's fight with Yoel Romero was incredibly close. And I actually, if memory serves me correctly, I scored that fight for Yoel Romero. However, again, very, very closely. I would need to go back and rewatch that fight. Thankfully, I have an excuse to. With this fight coming up, I'll be doing my tape study as always, so I'll have a more solid opinion on that. But if memory serves correctly, I actually scored that fight for Yoel Romero. And with that fight being as close as it was, when Costa pulls out, for whatever's going on, Israel's accusing him of doing something shady here because he apparently had a bicep tear that has miraculously healed, or basically he's insinuating he got popped by USADA and somehow managed to weasel away from it, which, looking at the physique on that guy, you wouldn't be shocked if he got popped by USADA. So something happens. Paulo Costa can't make the fight with Israel Adesanya. Israel Adesanya says, Yoel is the baddest dude in the division, and I want his name on my resume. Exact same thing that Henry Cejudo is doing. However, the difference is he was lined up with the rightful number one contender before that. Yoel lost a fight to the rightful number one contender in a very, very closely contested decision, and when the number one contender dropped out, he steps in to fill his shoes. That makes perfect sense. That makes absolutely perfect sense. Yoel was the guy, and he was one round and one judge away from being the guy and getting another title shot. So when the guy drops out, he steps in. I mean, that people that are upset about Yoel getting this fight off of a loss, to me, just simply don't understand. That makes perfect sense. And there's the difference. Like, these two situations are similar, but they are not the same. Now, if Peter Yan had been given the fight against Henry Cejudo, and then he dropped out, and Aldo stepped in on short notice to fill his shoes, then we would have the same situation. Then this would be the same situation, and I would be totally fine with Aldo stepping in on short notice to take the fight. But that's not what happened. Aldo was the guy that got the call simply because Dana felt like that's what they wanted to do, and that's probably what will make the most money. So, I mean, is what it is, but there's the difference in my opinion. I am far more excited to see Yoel take on Izzy because that fight, in my opinion, is just fantastic. That fight is absolutely banging. That one's going to be fun to watch, and I can't wait to do the tape study on that one because it's another one where I'm not sure how I feel about the line. My gut tells me that I want to bet Israel Adesanya, but he's like minus 260 right now. And I've been such a big fan of Yoel Romero. I don't know if anybody's minus 260 over Yoel Romero. That fight that he had with Paulo Costa was really, really close. So, I'm not sure how I feel about that one. And Izzy came out with a big statement saying that not only does he want to fight Yoel, he wants to finish Yoel. And that simply doesn't happen. So, again, Izzy just putting his nuts on the table for all of us, and he usually is a man of his words. So, I can't doubt the guy for anything at this stage, and I wouldn't be shocked if I would be shocked if he gets it done. People just simply don't finish Yoel Romero, but that's going to be a fun fight. The lead-up is going to be a lot of fun, too, because Yoel's a fun guy, even though there's that language barrier. When they did that press conference and he got, Skyped in on the TV or whatever and was chatting with Izzy, they have a lot of fun going back and forth. Plus, there's the dance battle and all that stuff. These guys they're going to match up well, and it's going to be a good time for the fans. Now, the moment that you've all been waiting for, let's talk about Conor freaking McGregor. So, this is going to be the first time in a long time. Now, okay, I'm already getting ahead of myself. This is a rumor. Conor's coach apparently has come out and said that they are looking for Justin Gaethje. They want the fight with Justin Gaethje. And we don't know how much truth there is to that. There's a lot of mind games going on, especially with these high-level guys, especially with Conor McGregor. There's a lot of misdirection, a lot of bargaining, and something like that, a quote like that, could be used as a stepping stone for something else. So maybe Conor has realized that Khabib is not interested in the rematch, because Khabib has made it very clear that he's not interested in the rematch. And Khabib does not play mind games. He doesn't think that Conor is deserving. He beat him handily, and he came out with a quote saying that the only reason that fight would make sense would be for drama and money, which he's 1,000% correct. And those are things that Khabib doesn't really seem to be motivated by. Now, the other option is so he may have realized that that's how Khabib feels, so he needs to actually earn this title shot rather than just jumping in after beating Donald Cerrone. And I think that would be the best mindset for him. I think that's the best thing for the fans, the best thing for the UFC, for everybody. Because I'm with Khabib in the fact that he did handle him. We can look at it, Conor says that he was, day drinking and doing drugs and shit like that. He did not take the Khabib fight seriously. And if that's true, if he pulled a Kamaru Usman 30% type of fight, then he gave a good account of himself in that fight. And a 100% focused, driven Conor McGregor is a different beast. And I'll be the first one to say that. He truly is. If he is sharp, if he is on point, if he is dedicated and driven, he's a completely different animal than when he's showing up, kind of like John Jones did, where you just don't think that much of your opponent and assume that you're going to punch them and they're going to drop to the canvas. So maybe we give him that shot. Conor McGregor is definitely the most entertaining sportsman in the UFC. He's got the biggest fan base in the UFC. He makes the most dollars. So for a lot of reasons, it makes sense to put that rematch together. The only one that it doesn't make sense is the shape of the division. So thank God the UFC knows what they're doing. We're getting Tony Ferguson versus Khabib. Conor has been on record saying that he does not believe that fight is going to happen. Given the history of that fight, the fact that a lot of people believe it's cursed, he might be right. Please, everybody, burn a sacrifice to the gambling gods. Pray that we get Khabib versus Tony, because it's got to happen. That fight is so good. It must happen. At any rate, Conor could be a last-minute fill-in for that fight if something should go down, which, hey, then, same as the other situations, what are you going to do? You got to have a fight. You've got a champion. He's ready to go. You've got a challenger who's exciting. There's already drama and heat there. He steps in on short notice. I would watch that fight. No problem. Absolutely no problem. Pony up, take my $60. I will pay to watch it. I guess the other thing is just that Conor may have finally realized that he's got to earn that shot in Khabib's eyes, because Khabib is the champion. Khabib is calling the shots. And beating someone like Donald Cerrone, who we talked about on the podcast, was the perfect mark for Conor McGregor to come back against and get a spectacular finish and really just get revived in the eyes of the MMA fans all around the world. That's not enough. That's just not enough. Being the last guy to lose to the champion and then taking out the guy barely clinging to the number 5 position, that's not enough to warrant you a title shot, especially when you've got a monster out there like Justin Gaethje, who has taken on all comers and killed most of them in the cage. That's the fight. I mean, there is nobody more hyped in the 155-pound division right now than Justin Gaethje. And then Conor McGregor is the only other dude that can step into that spot. So with Khabib being tied up with Tony, in my opinion, that's the next two guys, Gaethje and Conor. And given that Gaethje has been far more active than Conor, he's more deserving of that title shot. Now, given a fan standpoint, given a popularity contest, Conor obviously is going to be the UFC's choice to stick in there. But Gaethje is far more deserving. So they need to fight. They just absolutely have to fight. I hope that this rumor is true with all of my soul, because Conor versus Gaethje is a level of violence like we may have never seen. I mean, Gaethje is the king of violence. Every single one of his fights is balls to the wall until somebody hits the canvas. His fight with Dustin Poirier, holy shit. Like, I mean, just, it was amazing. And I will watch MMA fights like that any day of the week. So, throwing Conor in there instead of Dustin, I mean, if there's anybody that hits harder than Dustin does at 155, it's probably Conor. And the way that man is technical, how prepared he was for a guy like Khabib with his counter wrestling. I mean, I know Gaethje doesn't really use his offensive wrestling these days, or at all. But if he was ever going to, I think he would have a very difficult time taking Conor down with the way that he is. I think they match up very, very well. Neither of them utilize the leg kicks all that well. I mean, it's mostly going to be an exciting, fast-paced movement boxing match with a couple of kicks sprinkled in there. I mean, that would be a fun fight. That would be an absolute barn burner while it lasted, because Gaethje's taken some concussive shots from those knockout losses he took to Alvarez and Poirier. Conor, I think he's as fresh as he's ever been, and based on what he did to Cerrone, I know Cerrone was very highly compromised, but we've seen Conor's power throughout his entire career. He can crack. So those two guys are going to stand in the center of the cage and just bomb on each other. And in my opinion, if Conor can win that fight, this is maybe one of the coolest resurgence stories we've ever seen in MMA. I mean, the only other ones that I can think of are like Dominic Cruz coming back from his long layoff and injury to win his title back, and then John Jones coming back from his fiasco and run-ins with the law and shit like that to get his title back. Those are really the two big comeback stories that I can recall in MMA. And if Conor was to pull this off, if he was going to come back, beat Justin Gaethje, who's the most dangerous fighter that nobody wants a piece of at 155, and then gets a rematch with Khabib, who is the undisputed king and maybe one of the greatest fighters, well, not one of, maybe the greatest fighter that we have ever seen. I mean, that's a hell of a story. And then you can sell that rematch even more. I know if you make Conor and Khabib 2 today, it'll be sold out in about 15 minutes. But if Conor goes through that, if Conor flatlines Gaethje and then calls Khabib's name, dude, can you just imagine? They will build another row of seats in whatever arena they're going to host that thing in. It will be far and away the biggest UFC fight that there has ever been. The storyline will be incredible, because right now the storyline has holes in it. If he gets a title shot off of beating Donald Cerrone, the hardcores know what's up. Your average fan, the casuals, a lot of the Conor fans, they don't care. They'll sign up. They'll watch that fight. They'll be excited for it anyway. But those of us who really watch and pay attention, the UFC will get some flack for that. But if he flatlines Gaethje of all people, oh boy, you can't deny. You cannot deny him at that point. And I think that would just be the biggest event the UFC has ever put together if that happens. So I really hope that Conor McGregor sees what is going on here and he understands that he actually has to take that kind of a fight. Now, his silent strength that we witnessed against Donald Cerrone, to me, it really appeared to be a changing of tune for Conor in general, that I think he understands what kind of hole he's put himself in, especially with the fans and things like that, and I think he understands he needs to talk with his fists at this point. And if that's true, there's a very good chance, a very real chance, that this rumor of him hunting down Justin Gaethje is true. And Gaethje has been after Conor for a long time, so I pray they make this fight happen, because if they could make that fight happen before, around, slightly close to the same time as Khabib versus Tony, we've got a 4-man tournament at 155 that will just truly give us the best 155-pounder we have ever seen walk the face of the planet. These 4 guys, you can't count out Tony Ferguson potentially upsetting Khabib. And then if we got Conor versus Tony for the title, it doesn't have the sexiness to it that Conor versus Khabib 2 does, but as far as fights go, it would still be another absolute barn burner, hell of a fight. And same thing if Gaethje happens to get by Conor, then he is the one who is undeniable. Then he absolutely is the next man to take that title shot. So this is just the perfect setup for a little 4-man round table to see who really is the best. And the fight announcements for 2020 have been off the chain. Hopefully the injury bug doesn't get us too bad and we don't lose too many of them. We've already lost a couple, but they found relatively good replacements for the most part that I've seen. This week, not counting, because this weekend's card is a shit show to begin with. But the cards that are a little bit further down the line, fights that have dropped out, there haven't been too many of them. So let's just pray this whole thing holds together, because we have got some phenomenal MMA coming up, and I, for one, just absolutely can't wait. That's all I've got for you today, diehards. Thank you for tuning in. I know I kind of rambled a little bit there at the end, but y'all know how excited I get. I my brain wanders on these things and my mouth can't quite keep up sometimes. So, again, hit me in the comments below. Let me know what your most anticipated fight for 2020 is, the one that you're most looking forward to, and let me know how you feel about guys getting title shots off of losses. Also, let me know who you've got in Conor versus Gaethje, because that fight could legitimately go either way. Both of those guys are straight from hell with the way they throw those bombs. So give me your winner of Conor versus Gaethje in the comments below. As always, hit that like button, share, subscribe. Thank you all, diehards. Hit me up on Twitter, and I will look forward to talking to you all very soon. Good luck this weekend. We are going to crush UFC Norfolk. Let's get that cash, and let's roll.